Nintendo has done it again. Once again, Nintendo has made the whole entire internet, at least from what I've seen on Twitter and throughout the internet, hate them even more. Now, Nintendo, as much as they have made very, very great games throughout the years, exceptional games, some of the greatest games we've ever seen in the history of video gaming history, when it comes to their hardware and the way that they produce their games, not many people like that. And I'm one of them. Having like your games strictly on your hardware, not producing any games whatsoever that are Nintendo based onto any other hardware that you own, and then also making that hardware very restricted in terms of like, you know, the amount of frames that can run on that and the type of quality that gets run on that type of hardware. It is kind of sad to see that, you know, we have to play these amazing games like Tears of the Kingdom and Brett. Can you imagine Tears of the Kingdom made for PC, how much more beautiful it would look on a fucking PC, even just like another console like Xbox or PlayStation. It would look fucking phenomenal. So in order to get around this, what do people do? People make emulators, and emulators have been around for fucking years now. And there are emulators of almost any type of gaming console that you can think of. But one of the most popular emulators that has been out there for at least for a while now, from at least what I've garnered from all this information that's come out and the case that was filed against them, is Yuzu. So Yuzu was a very, like, it was a fast open source, and it was mainly focused on Nintendo Switch emulator. I'm not 100% sure at this point in time because unfortunately they have shut down their website, which I'll get into in a second, but I'm not sure if they did focus on any other emulators. Like if they did, I think from what I've garnered, they also had a website called Citra as well, which has also been shut down. I think that was like a 3DS emulator as well, if I'm not like mistaken by that, but it was also some kind of Nintendo emulator which was run by the same people who ran Yuzu. And unfortunately, you know, this, like I said, this was the biggest Nintendo Switch emulator that was out there on the market. So if you were looking for a Nintendo Switch emulator, if you wanted to play some of the Switch games on your computer, this would be the one to go to. But Nintendo, just over a week ago now, so it was on the 26th of February, which was in American time, so here it would have been the 27th of February here in Australia. Nintendo filed a lawsuit against Yuzu and Citra, and now today, at least from like the moment of me recording this, it has come to an end, which is so fucking quick. It only took a week for Nintendo to fucking crack down on this shit and end it in one fucking foul swoop. And Yuzu and Nintendo have made a settlement in their lawsuit, and Yuzu will be paying Nintendo $2.4 million in damages, which has been mutually agreed on upon both parties. Now, to Nintendo, $2.4 million is fucking nothing. Nothing whatsoever. Like, Nintendo's revenue in last year, at least from what I'm seeing on Wikipedia, in US dollars was $13.9 billion. $13.9 billion US, just under $14 billion. So to them, 2.4 is fucking nothing. But obviously to the people, the guys that created Yuzu and were running the website and running these emulators, to them, that's a lot of fucking money. To an average person, that's a lot of money. Even as someone who has a decent amount of money, $2.4 million have to pay out to a major company like Nintendo is a fuckload of money. And like I said, you know, Yuzu has officially shut their website down, including Citra. So if you have to go onto yuzu-emu.org, this note comes up here, and it just says about how, you know, Yuzu, like to thank you for people about the, you know, supporting Yuzu and talking about like their passion for Nintendo and just how they never intended to, you know, commit piracy, which they did in the end. When I was like looking through this all on Twitter, a lot of people like were like basically saying how Yuzu themselves brought this on their own. Like they brought this on themselves. And to me, I was like a bit confused with that. Because like I said, I just briefly knew that like there was this emulator that was out there by Yuzu, biggest Switch emulator, and it was being, you know, shut down by Nintendo. And then all of a sudden, a week later, they've already settled on a lawsuit. Now, to me, the reason why I think that they've already settled on this is because, like I said, with the amount of money that Nintendo had, they could just keep throwing money at this. They could just keep going to court. Where the guys who ran Yuzu, they don't have unlimited money like Nintendo. Nintendo essentially has unlimited money. $14 billion is essentially unlimited money. To have that much revenue in just one fucking year is insane. So to me, the guys over at Yuzu, they couldn't have enough money to be able to go through this. So to them, obviously, if they really wanted to go through this lawsuit, they probably felt like they would have come off worse on the outer end. They feel like they wouldn't have been able to win this lawsuit. So to them, like paying the 2.4 million is a lot cheaper than going through the lawsuit, losing it, and then, you know, fucking having to pay probably even more than what they have already paid to them. But like I said, I was wanting to like look into a bit more about emulation. And at first I searched up, I was just like wondering, I wanted to know if video game emulation itself is legal. And I searched it up, and obviously the first thing that pops up is right here. And it says, while emulation software itself are legal, emulating games is only so when legitimately purchasing the game physically and ripping the contents. Freely downloading or uploading game ROMs across various internet sites is considered to be a form of piracy, and users may be sued by copyright infringements. So you yourself, if you wanted to emulate your Switch onto your PC, essentially that's legal. If you've bought that hardware, and like say I have Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild, I have bought those games. So I can essentially rip and make an emulator onto my computer. That itself is completely legal. But when you start freely downloading or uploading games across various sites and stuff like that, that's what it gets considered a form of piracy. And then I wanted to look into this even more, because to me, I also think, I'm like, but there's so many emulators that are out there on the internet, and so many like Nintendo emulators, not just like for the Switch or the 3DS, but there's also Game Boy emulators out there. Like, why isn't Nintendo like cracking down necessarily on this? But from what I've garnered from information on Twitter and from the internet, is that people are saying that Yuzu kind of outed themselves, and they kind of brought this on themselves, because essentially what Yuzu was doing is that not only were they emulating the Switch on their website, but they had access to games that were like not released yet. So they somehow got access to some of these games that were not released, and then they were selling these games like before their release date on their Patreon for a price tag. So if you wanted to play before Tears of the Kingdom came out, you could play the emulated Tears of the Kingdom on your computer if you went onto their Patreon and you supported their Patreon. So to me, that's kind of where they went downhill. And essentially from what I've garnered as well, like I saw this tweet here, and this is like one of the more popular tweets. It's got 1 million views and like a decent amount of likes on Twitter. And they say, in light of the Yuzu getting shutting down, I wanted to make this PSA poster because I get the feeling that this was a huge factor in Nintendo being made aware of it. And it's just like a silly little meme poster, but I kind of get it. Is if you want to flex the multi-billion-dollar game company that you're going to pirate their game with a specific emulator, no, you fucking don't. All that does is let them know that the emulator exists, and they will try their hardest to shut it down. Loose lips sink ships. So from what I'm getting from, like I said, this information, like about from like what people like, yeah, I don't think that like Nintendo wouldn't have known about Yuzu. They have to know about all these different emulators, but I think it's just the way that Yuzu was going about it, and they seem to just be putting themselves out there just a little bit too much for Nintendo's liking. And once they started to like garner, maybe Nintendo took even more notice, the fact that they like had their own Patreon, like I said, putting out games that weren't even released yet before their date. That to me is like, you're kind of bringing it on yourself. But then I also want to go to this side of things, and like why I hate to see this is because, like I was mentioning at the start of the video about how shit Nintendo's hardware is, and I hate it so much how Nintendo hasn't brought any of their games whatsoever to PC. Whatso fucking ever. And I saw someone post this about this whole entire Yuzu situation, and it's a quote from Gabe Newell, the great fucking Gabe Newell, the god himself. He says, the easiest way to stop piracy is not by putting anti-piracy technology to work. It's giving those people a service that's better than what they're receiving from the pirates. That to me is so true. Like, Nintendo to me have to be some of the biggest fucking gatekeepers in the gaming realm ever to exist. Ever. Like, I could say that, like, yeah, Sony and Xbox over the years have been somewhat gatekeepers in terms of, like, wanting to share their products with their console, with each other's consoles, or, like, putting their games onto PC. Obviously, Xbox is owned by Microsoft. Microsoft owns Windows. So, you know, they would be more willing to put their games on the PC, and they've kind of started it earlier. But now, like, they are starting to, like, maybe, like, try to come together a little bit more. Even though Xbox has bought Blizzard, they are still saying that they will be putting games onto Sony. And it seems that, you know, Sony is now starting to bring, especially in the last couple of years, bring some games to PC. And I don't see Nintendo ever doing that. Even though, if Nintendo had to do that, and we saw it with Power World, not just because Power World is Pokemon with fucking guns, and it's so fun to play, but the fact is that, like, I feel like if Nintendo had to bring their games to PC, just put them on Steam, they would make so much fucking money off it. I don't think they understand how much, like, I've already bought Tears of the Kingdom. I have, like, almost a couple hundred hours on that game. I love it to fucking death. I think Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild is some of the best games of all time. If it had to come to PC, I would buy it again. I would 100% buy Tears of the Kingdom. To play it with a decent FPS would be fucking amazing. Would be so good. And it will also give the developers less restrictions as well. But yeah, it'll never happen. I never see. I just can't see it happen. Like, I can see PlayStation. I can see Bloodborne, which is like, a lot of people saying, like, it will never come to, like, PC because it's not owned by From Software. It's owned by Sony, and Sony don't have any intentions to, like, necessarily bring it to PC. But I still see Bloodborne being brought to PC before a fucking Nintendo game will be brought to PC. I never see it happening. I wish it would. I wish it would fucking happen. But I just don't see it happening because they are, like I said, they are the biggest gatekeepers when it comes to any of their games, which they can be. If they want to, of course they can be. Their like stuff, what they want to do with it is 100% up to them. Doesn't mean I can't be annoyed at it. Doesn't mean I can't hate it. Like, their stuff is there. Whatever they want to do with their games, if they want to keep putting it on, like, their own hardware and not onto PC, then yeah, they can obviously fucking do that. But at the same time, I can still sit here and I can say, you guys, I fucking hate you for it. I can still 100% do that. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. That's it from me. Peace out.